is only one perfect solution, but there are clues that will try to trick our team.
Hello there everyone, my name is Crazy Caleb, and welcome to another KTANE modded module tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at metal making. So this is the way the module looks, and what we have here is we have a rare meteo in the middle of the module that needs to be forged, and what we have here is we have 8 of these meteos around here. So we've got a goal in the middle, and we've got 8 meteos around the module circling right now. So what we need to do is we need to find a combination of 5 different meteos to forge this rare meteo in the center. That's our goal. And then what we can do is we can submit the module. So this module itself, not too hard to understand. It can definitely take a while to figure out the solution though, and I'm going to get into why that can take so long for just a moment. But first, let's figure out what our goal is. Each rare meteo has a different needs for incinerating meteos to correctly forge into it. So we have 3 different options. In this case, it's going to represent soul, time, and kai. I believe that's how it's pronounced, or it's either chi or kai. I believe it's more likely kai. So each of these have different requirements. Soul meteos require a big and hot combination while being of low mass. Time meteos require a high mass and a big combination while being cooler. And kai meteos require a hot and high mass while being small. So essentially what these are representing is orders of how this module works. So we have 3 different options for each of the meteos. In this case, heat, mass, and volume. The big combination represents the volume, the hot combination represents heat, and the mass obviously represents mass. So in this case, that's going to be the difference between mass and volume. Mass is the one that actually represents mass, and big represents volume. So in this case, that's what we're looking at here. So in this case, our middle one is looking like the time one here. It's sort of the box one. It's not the circle. It's not the not the soul one. It's not the pink. Soul is pretty easy to tell. These are all really easy to actually figure out. This one is kind of having a stroke. It almost looks like an hourglass in a way too, if you think about it, with a bunch of funky colors going around it. But in this case, we're going to be focusing on time. Time meteos require a high mass and a big combination, while being cooler. So that's going to be what we're looking at here. Each of the 8 meteos in the module has 3 features: heat, mass, and volume, which I just mentioned. The next 2 tables, when multiplied together, will give each meteos these 3 values. So in this case, if we take a look here, we have the different types of meteos and the planets based off of the sets where they come from, in this case. And now, here's where we get to the fun part. We have to first identify which set each of these guys are and which type each of these guys actually are. Now, identifying the type is actually quite easy to do. Most of the time, you can just figure it out by the color. In this case, air is sort of the white, dark is sort of the dark blue, or just blue itself. Soil is sort of orange, fire is red, glow is a very light green, it's almost a lime in a way. Herb is a dark green, in this case. Iron is a purple. H2O is sort of more of a cyan, I would argue. Zap is a yellow, and Zoo is much more of a magenta, like a lighter pink sort of deal. So the colors are easy to determine, but describing the shapes can be a bit interesting, especially because some of these have animations that are going on with them. Some of them are easy to tell, like this magenta over here, which in this case is a set 8 and a Zoo. But other ones might be a bit hard to describe. For example, this one over here, this orange, this is a set 10 soil. But it's quite easy to understand. So, let's get into this mod. First things first, we need to identify what each of these meteos are so that we can calculate all of the heat, mass, and volume for each of them. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to note down the type and the set. So, let's get right into this. So I'm going to start with this triangle up top here, and I'm going to make it really easy for me. So this is going to be H2O, and this is going to be a set 12, so let's go H2O, 12. And this is going to be the way that I'm going to write this down. And I'm going to actually write this in parentheses just to make it a little bit clear, because there will be a lot of numbers involved in this. And then what we can do is we can kind of just go clockwise around the whole thing just to make sure that we know where exactly we're at. So next up, we said that this one was a soil, and it's going to be set 10. So soil 10. Okay. Next up, we have this sort of dark blue one. This one is a dark, and it sort of looks like set 2 right here. Yeah, so it's going to be set 2. Dark, and that's going to be number 2. Okay, next up we have, this one looks like an air. It looks wide enough, but what is it? It is the 13. 13, yes. Okay, so air 13. That. Okay, next up we have, this one also looks like another orange. There's quite a few oranges here, so that means there's probably going to be a lot of soils. And it looks like this one right here, set 3. So soil set 3. Then we have the magenta one that we had beforehand. This was zoo, and it's going to be set 8. So zoo 8. Then we have another soil, it looks like. So soil. And it almost looks like it's going into the center. That's going to be one way we can describe it. It's going to be set 15 right here. Yeah. So set 15, so soil 15. And for our last one, let's take a look. So it's gonna be like a dark blue almost, and it's gonna be it almost looks like Chinese characters that you can kind of describe it as. Set 16 has a lot of these, as you can see down here. So this is gonna be set 16, and it is gonna be dark. So it's gonna be dark and set 16. Now, one thing that's very important to note down is that there actually is the possibility of there being duplicates. If that happens to happen, obviously that is indeed possible, just to let you know. So, let's get right into this. So now what we need to do is with these types determined, which in this case I'm going to pull up this guy right here. So with the types and the sets determined, what we're essentially going to do is we're going to multiply each of the numbers by by the meteos types and by the planets that they're on in this case. So for the planets in pairs, the number is odd. If the number of batteries is odd, we're going to be using the right one, otherwise the left. In this case, a lot of these guys happen to have pairs. Only 4 doesn't have pairs. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the batteries here. Do we have an odd number of batteries? No, we have 2 batteries, so we're going to be using the left set. Okay, so it's always going to be on the left. And what I like to do is I like to highlight each of these sets that each of these guys are from, just to make my life a little bit easier, so I don't have to look around all the time. So let's do 12, 10, 10, 12, 15, 16, 13, 2, 3, 8. Each of these are indeed from different sets, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're good to go. So now, we're going to multiply each of these 2 numbers together. In this case, the ones that are going to correspond to heat are going to be multiplied together, the ones that correspond to mass are going to be multiplied together, and the ones that are corresponding to volume are going to be multiplied together. And these are going to give 3 different values for each of these meteos. So let's take a look. So starting off with H2O. H2O, and it's going to be from set 12, so it's going to be here and here. So we're going to be multiplying, let's pop out our handy using calculator, by the way. So we're going to be multiplying 2.5 times this by 0.5. 2.5 times 0.5 is going to be 1.25. Note there's going to be no rounding in this whatsoever. 1.25 is going to be our first value, and this represents heat. And I'm going to write this, I'm going to note this down as H, M, and V, just sort of a way to keep track of what we're actually looking at here. Next up, we're going to be multiplying 1.5 times this by 2.5, so 1.5 times 2.5 is going to be a 3.75. And then 3.5 times this by 3 is going to be a 10.5. Okay, let's take a look at the next one here. So next up, we've got soil. Soil is going to be in set 10. So set 10. And honestly, I might just do all of the soils right now because there's a lot of these guys. So soil set 10, 3, 3, 2.5. So 3 times the soil, in this case over here. 3 times 0.5 is going to be 1.5. I'm going to bring you down a little bit. Then next up we have the mass. In this case, 3 times 3 is going to be 9. I can do that in my head. And 2.5 for the volume times 2. That's just simply going to be 5. Okay. Next up, let's do another soil. Let's do set 3. Or we can do set 15 since we're right here. 3.5 times this by 0.5. 3.5 times 0.5 is 1.75. This is for set 1. Set 15 rather. 3 times this by 2 is going to be 6. And 3 for the volume times this by 2 is going to be 6. Okay. Then finally for the set 3 for soil, let's go up here. And we're going to be looking at this one. So 1 times 0.5 is going to be 0.5. 4 times this by 3 is going to be 12. 2 times this by 3.5 is going to be a 7. And that's that one determined. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Dark in set 2. Dark is going to be right here. 1 times 5 is going to be 5. 3 times 2 is going to be 6. And 0.5 times 1.5 is going to be 0.75. This one I can do in my head. Next up for air set 13. Air is up here. Heat is 1 times 2.5, so it's going to be 2.5. 4 times this by 0.5, that's going to be 2, just simply dividing it in half. And 3 times this by 2 is going to be 6. let's head on over to zoo and set 8. Zoo and set 8 is going to be here. So 1 times 3 is going to be 3. 1.5 times this by 3 is going to be a... I should know how to do this math, come on. 1.5 times this by 3 should be 4.5, yep, that's right. And then finally, 4 times this by 0.5 is simply going to be 2. And don't worry, I will space these values out in just a moment. And then finally, for dark, we've got one more for dark left. This is going to be set 16. This is going to be our last one. So 1 times 2 is going to be 2. 2.5 times this by 3. 2.5 times 3 is going to be 7.5. And finally, for 4 times 0.5 is going to be simply 2. Okay, let's space these out. Let's make sure that we separate our heat from our mass and from our volume. So let's do a bit like this. Let's put you over here. Okay. Now let's give this plenty of space. One more, I'd say. Okay. Okay, this will be our mass right here. And then for our volume, okay, and just like that, what we've done here is we've separated, let's do one more space for each of them. So now what we've done here is we've separated all of our individual values here. So we have, for H2O, heat is 1.25, mass is 3.75, volume is 10.5, and so on and so forth. So now that we've determined all of our values, what we're going to try and find is we're going to try and find a combination of 5 different meteos. But there's a catch, because we need to find a set of 5 different meteos where each sequential value for the rare metal, in this case the heat, the mass, and the volume, as ordered above, in this case, is at least 8 below the last after all 5 are summed. So, what we're going to essentially do is we're going to try and find a pair of a series of 5 different meteos where we're going to sum up the heat, the mass, and the volume. Now we want the high mass, and we want a big combination. So we want the highest mass. So we want the mass to be the biggest. Then what we need to do is we need to have at least a difference of 8 between mass and volume. Then what we need to do is we need to have at least a difference of volume and heat. And that's the way that this works. So now one of the things that we're going to immediately realize is that mass is quite big. Mass is quite big. It has quite a few big numbers here that we can add up together. Volume also has some good options here too. Though let's definitely be careful because we want to make sure that we have heat be at least a distance of 8. So that's going to be pretty important. Now generally what I like to do is I like to start off by guessing the first couple of like bigger ones that in the largest one here. So in this case we can start with soil here. In this case that has a mass of 12, and that's quite nice because we want low heat, we want high mass, and we want semi-high volume. That's going to be the way that this works. Next up, let's take 9. That's pretty decent. We can take 6 here and here perhaps. And we kind of want a low one for this next one, so maybe let's do a 4.5. And let's see what that does for us. Or perhaps even a 7.5 here. That actually sounds so good. So now, what we're going to sum up is we're going to sum up the mass first. Let's sum up the mass. So let's do 9 plus 6 plus 12 plus 6 plus 7.5. That's going to give us a... Wait, I did something wrong here. 9 plus 6 plus 12 plus 6 plus 7.5 is going to give us a total of 40.5. This is a good number to start with. Next up, we're going to sum up the volume because we want a big combination. So we're going to do 5 plus 0.75 plus 7 plus 6 plus 2, a solid number, 20.75. But we might want to make that a little bit higher. Let's see what this gives us here. So now let's go over to the next one. Let's go over to heat. 1.5 plus 5 plus 0.5 plus 1.75 plus 2. Okay, now I believe we actually have an answer here. So what we just did here is we have, so the rare meteos, what they give us is they give us the order of which we need to put this stuff in. So in this case, from greatest to least, we want mass, volume, and heat. That's going to be the way that this works. In this case, we summed up mass first, we summed up volume second, and we summed up heat last. Now, if we take a look here, this does indeed apply to the at least 8 below after all 5 are summed for each individual one here. So if we do 40.5 minus the 20.75, this is indeed greater than 8. This is a difference of that's greater than 8. Now for 20.75 minus 10.75, this is a difference of at least greater than 8. So this does indeed apply to our rules here. This is an answer that we can submit. There is the possibility of there being multiple answers, keep that in mind, but this answer does indeed work for us. How do we submit it now? So if we go down to the bottom here, so after you found 5 meteos you plan to forge with, in this case we found our 5 guys here with the blue dots representing which ones we're looking at here, you must now find the order in which you must forge them. The first meteo to be forged with must heat the forge to be hot enough to use. The hottest meteo you will use will do. So in this case we're going to look at heat, and of the ones that we're going to be using here, which one is the strongest? And in this case this is going to be this 5 right here, or dark. So that we're going to be using the dark 2 first, so you use dark 2. Then next up, we're going to do, and make sure we don't use any of the other ones that we use again. However, if multiple meteos fit a condition that is going to be present up here, you may use either. So now, secondly, we're going to add the most massive meteo, so we're going to add the highest mass that we have here, which in this case corresponds to this 12 right here. Because we're adding 9, 6, 12, 6, and 7.5. 12 obviously is the much bigger one here, so soil is going to be our next one. So soil, 3. Next up, then thirdly, the most volume. So in this case, let's take a look at what we have here. We have got the 5, we've got the 7, but that's already been added. We have the 6 here. The 6 has not been added, so we're going to add the soil 15. Okay? Now fourth, forge the first clockwise of the remaining 2 after the first meteo you forged. So in this case, the first meteo that we forged, and remember, I got this in clockwise order. So in this case, if we take a look here, dark 2 is going to be U right here. Then we get, the next one should be air, right? Yes, it is, air 13. Indeed it is. So in this case, we have our order listed clockwise if we go down. So now, forge the first clockwise of the remaining 2 after the first meteo you forged, then finally forge the last remaining 1. So from the dark that we started from here, in this case the dark 2, let's go down the list and see which one we've come to first that we haven't done yet. We've already done soil 3, we've already done soil 15, we have not done dark 16. So this is going to be our fourth one, dark 16. And finally, our last one is going to be the soil 10. Okay, we have our answer. Now let's put it into the module here. So we're going to do dark 2. Dark 2 is this this dark blue one here. So let's go over here. Dark 2. All I have to do is just simply put it into the module, and it will disappear. Next up, we've got soil 3. So soil 3 is going to be 2 clockwise from the position that we just had here. In this case, it is indeed soil 3 rather. Yep, that is right here. That's going to be U. Then next up, I'm going to bring this down here. So next up, we have soil 15. Soil 15 is going to be 2 clockwise from that. It's going to be this one right here. Just to make sure it is indeed correct. Then we're going to add the dark 16, the other dark that we had here. Dark 16 was the Chinese characters one or whatever it is. I'm not quite sure how to describe it. I'm not sure if it even is Chinese characters. It might even be kanji for all I know. But we're going to enter in this one. And then finally, we're going to enter in our last soil, which would be soil 10. And indeed it is. So now let's hit soil 10. The 3 remaining ones will go away. 5 will appear. And just like that is a solved module. So it's a bit of a lengthy module, but honestly, it's not too bad once you understand how you're doing it, and sometimes it can be very easy to find the combinations that you need to find. So I'm going to go through another example really fast here because of the fact that math can take a very long time to do. But overall, it's not a really bad module to do, and it's not a bad module to understand. There is the possibility of there being multiple solutions, but so long as the condition applies, the at least 8 below after all 5 are summed, and obviously the correct order, you should be good to go. It's as simple as that. Simple as 1, 2, 3. So let's take a look at one final example here. And let's get this module done. Okay.
There is only one perfect
Okay, a wide variety of different stuff. We have, okay, just as I mentioned beforehand, there is the possibility of there being duplicates. In this case, we have 2 of these yellow ones, in this case representing the zap, and that's going to be important to note down. So, they will be the exact same answer, by the way. That's going to be just true for that. They're going to be, if you get a different answer for both of them, you're doing something wrong. Seriously. So, let's start perhaps at this sort of cyan one right here. This one looks like it might be H2O. Of course, I could be wrong. It might be air. Yes, it's air. So it's air to be air, set 15. So air 15 to start us off. Let's continue clockwise. This one looks red. It's going to be probably fire, I imagine. And in this case, it corresponds to fire set 9. Okay. Bring it close. The next up, we've got a yellow. I'm assuming that this is a zap. So we have this one right here. Yeah, from set 13. So it's going to be zap 13. Then we have another fire here. It looks like a kanji case. So it's going to be set 16. That one's pretty easy to determine. 16. Another zap case. This one's going to be a duplicate that we have here. So this is going to be corresponding to set 6. Here we go. So next up, we have sort of this purple one that's kind of colliding in with each other into the module here, and it's going to be corresponding to iron set 11. Okay. Next up, we have green. I imagine this is a herb. Indeed, it is. It's going to be set 1. Okay. And then finally, we have the duplicate sap. This is going to be set 13. No, set 6. Excuse me. Set 6. Okay. Now let's do the math. So first things first, let's check the number of batteries we have here. In this case, it is odd, so we're going to be using the right set of planets this time. So, and obviously, let's also determine our goal. Our goal is going to be Sol here, and this one's very easy to tell. It's pink, and it's going to be requiring a big and hot combination while requiring a low mass. So the biggest that we're going to want is we're going to want volume, then we're going to want heat, then we're going to want mass. That's going to be the way that this works. Okay. So let's get into the solving process of this. Let's get into here. So we've got air set 15. Everything's going to be on the right now in this time. So we've got set 15. We've got set 13. We've got set 6. We've got 11. We have 16. We have 1 and 9. That should be it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have the duplicate, obviously, so that's going to be applying here. Okay. Let's take a look and let's see what we need to do. So I'm actually going to highlight all the planets too, just to make my life a little bit easier. Okay. Let's keep this as highlighted. Okay. So starting us off with air. Air is going to be 15. 15 is going to be 3, 2.5, and 3. 3 times 1 is going to be 3. 2.5 times 0.5 is going to be 1.75. Or am I thinking? It's 1.25. Yeah. So let's do that. 1.25. And the volume is going to be 15 times 3 times this by 3 is going to be 9. Okay. Next up, we've got fire. Fire is going to be over here, and it's going to be from planet 9. That is going to be a freeze, which is oddly enough appropriate. It's going to be 0.5, 4, and 4. So 0.5 times this by 3 is going to be 1.5. 4 times these last two, 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times this by 1.5 is going to be a 6. Okay, let's also do the other fire here. So for set 16 is going to be 4, 1.5, 3. 4 times 3 is 12. 1.5 times 1 is going to be 1.5. And 3 times this by 1.5 should be 4.5. Yeah. Next up, we've got zap 13. Let's take a look at zap here. So we have, for set 13, we have 1. 1 times 2 is going to be 2. Then we have 0.5 and 5. 0.5 and 5. That's just simply going to be 2.5. That's divided by 2. And then 2 times this by 2.5 is going to be a 6. No, it's going to be a 5, excuse me. Okay, let's do the two other zaps, because we have these ones are really easy to do. So we've got 6, set 6 for the zap. We have 1 times 2 is going to be 2. Then we have 0.5 times this by 0.5 is going to be 0.25. And then 2 times 3.5 is going to be 7. Let's copy this information and put it right down here. There we go. Next up for iron, iron is going to be over here, and we're going to be looking at set 11. 1.5 times 1.5 is going to be 2.75. 1.5 times 1.5 is going to be 2.25. Okay. 2 times this by a 2.5 is going to be a 5. And then finally, for our last volume here, is going to be 2 times this by 4.5. That's going to be a 9. And finally, for herb on 1, quite simple. 1.5 times 2 is going to be a 3. 1 times 1.5 is going to be 1.5. And then a 3 times 5 is going to be a 15. Jesus. I have a good idea that if we're going to be trying to get a big volume, in this case, we're going to be using this one. So now that we've determined our values, let's try and find a pair of 5 meteos that actually works. So let's determine them. So we need a low mass, and already the numbers of mass are actually quite low, so that's actually quite good in our favor. And the numbers of the heat are actually quite not too bad too, but they're definitely significantly larger than mass. This one shouldn't be too hard to do, I don't think. So let's get a big volume first, and let's do this. We've got herb, obviously, I think we're going to use here. I think it's very safe to say that. Let's maybe go for the 9, giving us 2.5 and 3. That's quite nice. It does give us the 5 for mass. Let's keep that in mind. So we do kind of want a bigger number, and we kind of want to stay away from that. Actually, probably we're not going to use this one, because we want to keep mass as low as possible, and this is going to be the one that we're not going to want to use. I'm sure that volume is not the big issue here. I'm sure probably if we can use both zaps, and maybe even a fire, that would be quite nice. So let's add all these up, and let's see what we get here. I'm sure that these 5 would be probably good. So let's do the volume first. The volume is the biggest one that we want. 9 plus 4.5 plus 7 plus 15 plus 7 is going to be a 42.5. That's pretty darn good. Next up for heat. Heat is going to be our next one. 3 plus 12 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2. Solid, 22. We're definitely below 8 compared to these two here. We're definitely, there's a distance of 8, rather. And then for the mass, we've got 1.25 plus 1.5 plus 0.25, a really good one to use, plus 1.5 plus 0.25 is going to be 4.75, easily below, easily at least 8 below. That's just so easy to tell. So this is going to be this is going to be an example that we can't use. This is going to be the one that we're going to use. So now let's go down to the bottom. First things first, we need to use the hottest one that we have here. In this case, that is obviously going to be the fire from set 16, because of the fact that it has a very large heat of 12. So that's a very good start for us. Next up, we're going to use the most massive, so the one that has the highest mass. That is going to be, of the ones that we're going to use, that is going to be shockingly between the 1.5 here. Now we already used fire 16, so herb is going to be the one we're going to use here. So let me just make sure. Yes, that is right. So we're going to be using herb 1. And now the highest volume. We've already used 15 at this point. So let's take a look and see what else we need. We've got 7, we've got 4.5, we've got 9. Air is going to be our next one that we're going to use here. So air, set 15. And then finally for our last two, so from the first clockwise, after the remaining two, so we started at fire. We're going to go clockwise. It's going to be one of the zaps. It's actually going to be one of the zaps here. So it's going to be this first zap that we get here. From the fire. Make sure that we use the first one from the fire. Because we're going to use zap 6. It's going to be zap and then zap. So let's take a look and let's make sure we do this right. So we've got the fire from set 16, which is going to be the Chinese character, right? Yes. Remember, we're going to want to use the one that is... wait a minute. Fire from set 16. Can there be a zap that's right next to it? Yes, there is. Okay, I'm just blind. There we go. Okay. We're going to be using this one first, then that one. Very important to note down. So we've got the fire from set 16. Yep. And we're using this one. Next up, we've got the herb. Herb is pretty easy to tell. The air. Air is going to be over here. We're going to be using you first, and then you. This should do it. And just like that is a solved module. As always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to stay crazy, stay cool, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.